What's going on, friends? Logan Myers here from Cinephellas.com, and I'm excited for this movie that I just checked out actually earlier today, The Final Girls, directed by Todd Strauss-Schulson. Has a bunch of really good actors in it. Malin, Akerman, DeVine, Taissa, Farmiga, Alexander Ludwig, Alia, Shawkat, and Thomas Middleditch. You know Thomas Middleditch from Silicon Valley. He's kind of got that overbite thing, always talks with his mouth open. But yeah, it's a great film, and it pays homage to 80s slasher flicks, which literally are my favorite type genre film ever. It pays homage to, obviously, Friday the 13th, The Burning, Sleepaway Camp. It has everything in there, and there's a lot of Easter eggs throughout the movie for, horror fans like myself that would notice that in the posters and the way the set and like things in the background, what have you. But essentially, Taissa Farmiga's mother, Malin Akerman, was a scream queen in the 80s of Camp Bloodbath, and which is kind of like the Friday the 13th type of film. She passes away, and 3 years after her mother passes away, she goes to the movie theater to see Camp Bloodbath, which is the anniversary. Taissa Farmiga's character and all her friends are at this movie theater to see Camp Bloodbath, and basically a guy's in the crowd smoking a joint, and then kind of the ash falls off, and then it starts the whole theater on fire. So they're trying to figure out a way to get out of the burning theater, and of course the only way to get out is to go through the movie screen. And when they go to the movie screen, they go back into the 80s, into this film, Camp Bloodbath. So Max and her friends are in this movie. They're back in the 80s, where basically 2015 era meets the 1980s, which, opens the door for a lot of great characters like Adam DeVine. He's like the cheeseball, sex fiend character that we had in all those 80s flicks. That's all he cares about is drinking and getting laid. And he had some really great one-liners throughout the film that just really made me laugh. He was like the best comedic performance in the whole movie. And Adam DeVine's character, is trying to seduce all the women in the movie, including Malin Akerman's character. And he has this one line, he's like, "Genie's already out of the bottle, make a wish." All seductive with his, Miller High Life beer. And, they introduce some other characters that are from the slasher movie. And it kind of brings a contrast in the film, new versus old. You have like the 80s short shorts and the tank tops, and then with all the Max's friends, they have like iPhones and like newer technologies. There's a lot of jokes about that. Thomas Middleditch has his iPhone out when Billy the Killer's coming after him. He's like trying to take a selfie with them, and there's some funny parts like that because the characters in the 80s didn't know what an iPhone was. They didn't even know what a cell phone was. So they're like, yeah, right, a cell phone, that's impossible. It has to be plugged into the wall for a phone to work. And that was like, really, really good aspect of the film is poking fun at technology and how it was different in the 80s. But I'd have to say Thomas Middleditch probably was my favorite character. His name was Duncan in the movie. He's like the cliche fanboy, which much like myself, that knows the genre, that knows these slasher flicks. The do's and don'ts. Don't run upstairs. Don't get stoned. Don't get naked and have sex. You're gonna die. And that was his whole character in the movie. It was just, he knew what was going on. He knew the movie by heart. Camp Bloodbath 1 and 2. And he's like, no, you can't do this. This is how it happens in the movie. And he's kind of pointing them in the right direction, but also acting stupid at the same time. Like I said, by taking a selfie with Billy, which is kind of like Jason Voorhees. Billy has the mask and the machete, and he's like huge. And he's after the kids in the movie. And what's great about this film is seeing characters actually inside an old 80s slasher flick. We've learned from so many hundreds of movies what not to do. And when they're actually in this film, Max and her friends, they're trying to change the outcome of the actual film. And one of which would be her mother, Malin Akerman's character, which was Nancy. And that was the benefit of the movie, is them going back into this film and changing the way that these characters, changing their outcomes, basically, making sure they don't get killed and using their brains and taking on Billy, the killer, and making sure that they do the right thing, that everybody survives. But does that happen? Of course not. It wouldn't be an 80s comedic slasher flick without some unneeded, death scenes. As they're in the movie, they're trying to figure out how can they get out of here? Can they run away from this? And that really brought in some really cool camera work that I really noticed and loved about this. When they're trying to run out of this camp, it just the whip cam comes around like a 360 angle, and it's like a reoccurring event, so they can't get out of this sequence or this movie, no matter how hard they try. There's a lot of cool steady cam shots too that made me. It kind of reminded me of Evil Dead, like Evil Dead 2, like in the woods and the cabin, where they like zoom in and like flips around, and it's all going like this, and it kind of makes you disoriented from the audience standpoint, and it had a lot of that feeling and overall elements that we've seen from like Evil Dead. Another cool aspect of this movie is how they go back in time. The flashback sequences that are in black and white. They're standing at Camp Bloodbath in the cabin or whatever, and it looks like it's starting to melt, and it comes down, and all the characters turn in black and white, and they're back in the 50s where they see essentially how Billy becomes the killer. He's tortured by other camp counselors and kids back in the 50s, and he gets his vengeance, and he comes back and he kills all these people that really harmed him. What I was saying, it's really cool in this movie how Max and her friends are able to interact with the actual movie, such as the lettering on the credits, that like you see them walking over it or passing against it. It was cool how they could interact with the actual movie with the characters in it. But there's some negative aspects of the movie overall. I think there was a lot of emotion into it. There wasn't as much killing as I'd like. And I would say that Billy wasn't really in the movie, the killer, wasn't in the movie that much as I would like. And I think it all comes down to the rating as well. It's a PG-13 movie, so you're missing a lot of gore. You don't get, like the sex or the nudity, or, those aspects of 80s slasher films that we all know and love. If this was set as an R rating, I think it would have had more of the elements that, the 80s slasher genre has. But, I'll let that slide. There's a few things in there like pot smoking and things like that, but you don't have the sex and the nudity or the language as much. And there's a lot of characters in this movie. It's like hard to keep up at times because you're going with, the current 2015 people in the movie and then the actual characters and actors in the movie. And they kind of throw in like a little romance in there and how they're interacting with one another. And I don't think that aspect really worked for the movie. It was just kind of thrown in there. And up into the final act of the movie, it's kind of slow. But you do see Max's character get some redemption, and she takes on Billy, and that was pretty badass. Seeing her fight him and the cool like purples and blues of the night in the background. It was just a great sequence and really something I liked a lot. And it shows that Taissa Farmiga is like a different character in this movie than we're used to, from American Horror Story. She's just badass in the end, and and it kind of brings the film title into play. The final girl, the final girls of, slasher movies are the ones that take on the killer at the end, like Jamie Lee Curtis and Halloween. That was really cool how they brought Max's character in being the final girl instead of her mom from Camp Bloodbath. Overall, I thought The Final Girls was pretty epic from start to finish. It had all the great elements from the 80s that we love. It has the comedy, it has a little bit of gore, has a little bit of romance, and it's a slasher movie. It's making fun of the slasher movie while being in the slasher movie. So I thought it was a cool concept. For the most part, it had original premise of bringing the new generation into an old movie and trying to change the outcome and try to save the people that are within the movie and for them not to make stupid choices and get whacked by a 7'5" monstrous guy with a machete. So I really, really love that aspect. I thought the directing was great. The cinematography was great. The score was great. Acting was great all around, even though there was a lot of actors. And for the most part, I enjoyed it. So for all my friends that are into 80s horror movies that love the genre as much as I do, I definitely think you should check this out. It came out in 2015. Go check it out on Netflix or, pick up the Blu-ray. And I'm giving The Final Girls a 3 out of 5 hair pieces. And also check out Cinephellas, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Twitter, Facebook, and our website, cinephellas.com. And reminder, we'll be giving away the Deadpool movie on Blu-ray to one lucky fan that uses the hashtag Fellas Giveaway. So that's all I got for you today. Go check out The Final Girls, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!